Welcome to CFI's Advanced Excel Formulas course. In this course, we're going to take your Excel skills to the next level. We're going to show you how to combine formulas and functions together to make your analysis and your models more dynamic. Being advanced in Excel is not necessarily about knowing just specific functions, it's knowing how to combine them, how to take date functions and combine them with financial functions, how to take lookup functions and combine them with charts and graphs. We'll show you in this course how to make your model so dynamic that you'll be truly a world-class financial analyst. We've got a lot of great stuff to cover in this course. We're going to work through a case study together that shows you how to set up a model intelligently. We're going to think about what we want the output to look like when we start designing the basic foundations. We'll cover formulas, functions, charts, graphs, data tables, lookup functions, all sorts of advanced things you need to perform dynamic and world-class financial modeling. To complete this course, you're going to watch all the video lectures where we demonstrate step-by-step how to build these formulas and functions. Then you'll work through it on your own, in your own spreadsheet, and you'll have the confidence you need to be able to perform truly advanced Excel modeling, which will give you deeper insights and add more value in your career as a financial analyst. In CFI's Financial Modeling and Valuation Analyst program, we're obsessed with practical applications of financial modeling. So this course covers some really important concepts in how to take your financial models to the next level and how to become a world-class financial analyst. Key learning objectives. In this course, the objectives are about making everything as dynamic as possible. We're going to start by setting up dynamic time periods for the model. Then we're going to look at how to create dynamic financial statements that can be adjusted based on time periods. Then we're going to learn how to make the analysis dynamic. That means the formulas and functions use combinations that allow us to retrieve information and analyze the financial statements. Then we'll look at dynamic tables, data tables, and pivot tables that can be used to further analyze the information. Then we'll look at our outputs. That means making dynamic charts that automatically update based on how many time periods we have. And finally, we'll look at recording macros and see how we can use them to speed up manual functions that we can automate. About this course is designed for professionals in investment banking, equity research, financial planning and analysis, or corporate development, where advanced Excel modeling is critical. We're going to be using Excel 2016, but it will also work for versions of 2013 and 2010. This course builds on CFI's Excel Crash Course. We assume you already know the basics, which are the shortcuts and the standard formulas and functions in Excel. We're going to be creating advanced functions and formulas by combining what we covered in earlier courses, so even experts will learn a lot in this course. Template setup. In this session, we're going to teach you how to create a dashboard at the top of your analysis that can control everything below. And we're going to use dynamic time periods to make this analysis move as we change the start period and end period. We're going to show you how to create summary data based on a larger data set of information. And we're going to build in scenarios so that you can choose between a base case, upside case, or downside case. And finally, we're going to be creating dynamic calculations and schedules that feed into more advanced analysis later. So the theme in this session is all about making everything as dynamic as possible. Let's switch over to Excel now and get going. Please open up the Excel file called CFI Advanced Excel Course -blank. In this file, you can see we've got two tabs. The first one is called Sheet 1. The second one is called Data. And this contains some raw data that we're going to use to make our dynamic model. Let's go back to Sheet 1. We're going to create a dynamic schedule here that has a first or starting period and a last period. And these are going to be the drivers of the model. It's going to have a start date and an end date. So the first period, the end of the first period is going to be December 31st, 2018. So we can type that in. The last period is going to be December 31st, 2027. And then what we want to know is the number of periods between the first and the last one, assuming that we're using annual periods for this example. So we need to take the difference between the number of years. In order to do that, we're going to use the year function in Excel. Year extracts the year from a reference point. So we'll take the last period and subtract from it the first period. And remember, we're just pulling out the years from these dates, plus 1, because we want to include the first period in this calculation. So there are 10 time periods. And if we go down and look at this and select all of the time periods here, we see that there are 10. So that's perfect. This is working correctly now. Let's set these hard-coded assumptions to be blue, as we always do, and use our shortcuts Alt-H, FC, and then you can use the arrows to select that specific blue. We can copy that and paste special, Alt-H, V, S, and T for formats to apply that formatting to the other cell. So there's a refresher on 2 of our key shortcuts that we use. Now we're ready to start building our dynamic time periods. So the first period is going to be equal to the year of the first period, of course, and we can anchor that with F4 and close the bracket. So the first period is 2018. Then what we want to do is start counting and adding periods until we get to the last one. So we need to use an if statement, and we're going to say if the prior period is less than, and then a year formula, the year of the last period, which we anchor in place with F4. So if it has not reached the last period yet, then, so the comma indicates then, we take that prior period and we add 1 to it. Otherwise, we want an empty cell. And the closest thing we can do to getting an empty cell is putting 2 quotes like this with nothing between them. Technically, it's not an empty cell, but it just doesn't contain anything that actually matters for the analysis. Then we can take this formula and fill it right with Control R, and you'll see that it stops at 2027. Now let's perform a little test and make sure this is working properly. I'm going to press F2 to edit the cell. Let's try changing it to end in 2020. Perfect, it shortens the analysis right up. Let's try going out to 2030. Perfect, that works as well. So I'm just going to put this back to 2027, and that's what we've got. Now, you'll recall that I said earlier the cell is technically not empty with the 2 quotes. If you put your cursor here in B5, press Control and then the right arrow, you can see that it jumps to column Q. That's because all of these cells here actually have formulas in them, but no output being displayed. So just keep in mind that all of these cells here contain formulas. Let's select this entire area and format it. Let's press Control 1, and we're going to change the fill. What we're going to do is select More Colors, Custom Color. In our case, we're going to use CFI Blue. CFI Blue is 1946-87. You would want to use your corporate colors for your company or whatever you're working on. Now let's change the color, Alt-H-F-C of the font. We're going to change that to be white. Let's press Control B to bold it, and let's add year here as a label in the left. So now we've got a very nicely labeled setup that's completely dynamic to whatever start and end periods we want to put in this analysis. Now that we have the time period set up, let's move over to the Data tab. Let's select everything here, copy it with Control C, Control Page Up to flip back, and let's paste it here, Alt, H, V, S, and V for values. That ensures we don't copy across any formatting in case there was some unwanted formatting on the other tab. Let's select all these numbers here, Control 1, and in the number section, let's set the kind of number that we want. Separators, no decimal places, and negative numbers in brackets. Let's also select all of these cells here and press Control space bar to select the columns. What we want to do is format the width of them. So let's press Alt H O for format, and then let's set the width, the column width is W, and let's set the width to be 10. That looks like a pretty good start. For this cell here, we can press Control space bar and then Alt H O and then I to automatically fit that. So everything's looking good here. Let's select all the numbers. And we can quickly go to all hard-coded numbers by pressing F5 and then S for special. Let's go to all constants and ignore the text. We just want numbers. So you can see there we've selected all constants, and we can now change the font color, Alt-H-F-C, very easily so that all those hard-coded numbers are in blue. Now let's insert two columns here. Alt-H-I-C is a shortcut for insert column. Let's insert one more, Alt-H-I-C. And these are a bit too wide, so let's select these, Control Space Bar, and let's format those. And let's set the width of them so that they are 10, just like the other ones. There we go. And we're going to put some labels here, which are total and average. And we're going to create some actual control panel up here to control these, so total and average. Let's assume for now that we want to see 3 periods for the total and 3 periods for the average that we've got in columns B and C. Let's just format these to be blue so we know that they're hard-coded assumptions. And we're going to design a formula here that's going to take a total and an average linked to these assumptions right here. So we'll say that the total here is equal to the sum of, and we always start at the first point, of course, but then what we need to do is tell it where to end the calculation. And we're going to use the offset function. The offset function moves a reference point. So we're going to move the ending reference point of sum so that it's dynamic and that it's linked to the assumption above. So the ending point could be D7, but it's actually going to be offset by a certain number of rows and columns. So 0 rows, because we always want to stay in the same row, but it's going to be offset by this number of columns here, which we anchor with F4, minus 1, because we don't include the starting reference point. And then press enter. And let's compare that to just manually calculating the sum of these 3 periods. You can see that it's working. Now let's change this to be 5. And if we change our comparison period here to be 5, you see we get the same number. And if it's just 1 period, well, then we just get the number in 2018. So we can see that this is working. So this is a cool way to make this total very dynamic, and we're going to do the same thing with average. Let's start typing our formula here, equals average. We started just like a normal average function, semicolon, but now we're going to offset it. And the ending point could be D7, but we're going to offset it by a certain number of rows, which is 0, and a certain number of columns, where the assumption is contained here, anchor it with F4, minus 1 because we don't need to include the starting point, and then double close bracket and press enter. Let's check manually to see that that's working. Let's just calculate the average of those 3, and that's the number we get. Perfect. Let's change the average now to be 1 time period. We just get the 2018 number. To be 10 time periods, we get that larger number, and then 3 time periods. So now these are dynamically linked. We can select them and fill them down with Control D. And now we have these totals and averages for the whole income statement. Now that this is set up, let's just do some quick formatting. Let's insert another column here, Alt-IC, just so that there's a little bit of space here. Let's align these labels to be right, Alt-H-A-R. And then let's select this row here, row 6. And let's format it so that the background color matches the line above. So we're going to make it CFI blue again. That's how you set a custom color. And let's make the font color white. There we go. And let's actually insert one more row at the top here. Let's make this have no fill. There we go.
Continue learning. Join CFI today.